Hey everybody, this is Alan from Woodcrest Bonsai. In this video I'm going to trim my bald cypress dome. And I have two goals. One is to shorten a lot of the leaders. So say like this guy here, that's coming up here. I know it's hard to see because there's just so much stuff. And then also remove leaders that are competing. So for instance, this guy right here has two leaders. This one is taller, but then there's another. Actually, there's two more smaller ones. Take those two off and just leave one leader. And that's going to be for every tree. So I've decided to separate the tree into quadrants. So I'm not going to try to do it all at once with the camera at one angle, because I don't think you'll get much out of that. So I'm going to move the camera around the grove and work at just a small section at a time. I'm going to start with the back of the tree. This is the back right-hand side if you were looking at the front. And as I mentioned in yesterday's video, Hurricane Milton pushed a bunch of these trees over so where they have this weird sweep. But I'm just going to leave that for now. I'm not going to really even worry about that. But if we take them as individuals, we see that this one has three competing leaders, and I really only want one. So there we go. That was all we needed to do on that guy. And I may not get this perfect because there's so many little seedlings in here. So here's another one with almost three competing leaders. And what I'm doing is I'm going to the leader that's facing out so that, a grove, the interior trees would never let these outside trees grow in like that. They just won't. So then I'm choosing the leader that's on the outside of the grove. So here's another one, triple leader. Take this one off. Take this one off. And then I'm going to shorten these guys too. I'm going to shorten everybody. Here's another one with three. And many, many, many of them have competing leaders. Can I get a little closer? And, as the viewer, you may not really see all that much difference. And another thing I wanted to do was make sure that my main tree, which right now is like way over here, is the tallest of all of them. Because a lot of these guys in the back, like this one right here, has just really grown like crazy. So where were we here? Here's another one with competing leaders. And I think I'm going to go down. I'm going to chop a little further down. So what I did was I took off, I cut here originally. And what I've been doing is taking off the leaders like this and allowing the one that's closest to the top of the old cut to continue as the leader. But with this one, I actually cut all of that off and let a lower one become the leader. And I may do that with numerous of these guys, because they're just going to keep growing up and up and up and up. So here's another one that's, see if we can't get a little better angle on this guy. Oh, and there's a weed, which is an oak tree, which is why it's still in there. And this guy just sent out 1, 2, 3, 4. And then a bunch of little ones, almost 6, 7, 8, and they're almost all the same size. So I think I'm going to do the same thing with him. I'm going to take him way back to here. So I basically cut off the entire top and all what would have been the leader. I would have saved this guy had I wanted the tree to get as tall as possible. But with these guys on the outside, I want them to be the smallest and then go up and up and up. And so cutting back, but still leaving that really nice healthy leader, will not slow that guy down at all. So now the one next to it doesn't really have the opportunity to do that. So I'm just going to take off. And you have to remember that these guys are only a year old. So I am just, I don't want to say in shock, because I know they grow fast and they're super healthy, but I'm just so happy with their development. Here's another one where there's a whole bunch of leaders, but I'm going to come down and take off. So I cut it to there. This guy was probably twice the size. I cut everything way down, but now I'm going to cut even more, and then it still has a nice leader. So there we go. This group here is pretty much finished. The leaders have all been reduced to just one. And once again, it's probably not perfect. And then I've cut the tops off. So there's another one that has the same opportunity. Take it down a little tiny bit lower. Whenever I do a chop, see, in the first chops, I did straight across, but I'm cutting more at a 45-degree angle now. Okay, that guy looks good. Still a couple little more competing leaders. Chop him way back. I think I'm even going to go deeper on some of these guys. You know, this is another thing. As a beginner, I used to make that mistake. If I want my tree to be 8 inches high and it's 12 inches high, I don't cut it to 8 inches, because then I'm constantly fighting the new growth to keep it at 8 inches. I cut it back to 6 and then let it grow that extra 2 inches up to 8 inches. So that's a process that I had to learn. Don't be afraid to cut things back hard and then let the new growth grow to the silhouette that you want. Instead of constantly just, if you cut to the silhouette that you want, then you're constantly having to trim to keep it there. Here's another one. So it appears as though there's a percentage of trees that I'm taking that whole little top part off, and then there's some others that I'm just reducing them and keeping the top one. So here's another one that it's just a tiny little bit, but I cut it back to this leader right here and then shorten it. And then this one right here, same thing. Take off the old top, but allow this new leader to continue to grow. This guy in the back here, I do believe, is one of the perimeter trees. Because the story, this is another perimeter tree. If we look right here, can you see that guy? Well, probably not. I can't see it. He's just barely, hello. So I took this mica pot, filled it with soil, planted hundreds of seeds. Only about 5 germinated, and they were all close to the edge of the pot. So this little guy that you really can't see much, he's sticking around as a pencil, versus his neighbors that are all only half the size of a pencil. So I do have the feeling that this guy here is another one of those perimeter guys. Had I had to do it all over again, I probably would have removed all those guys, because what I did was I just left them where they were and then I replanted, and this is what we've got today. So some of the perimeter ones are actually some of the most robust, and this one is a perfect example. And now this one may be the most drastic that I do yet, in that I'm going to take it all the way down to here. So I cut off a huge part of that tree. But it's a vigorous tree, and it was, if we put it back on there, it was competing as one of the very tallest. I mean, look at the new growth. The new growth is 7-8 inches long, versus some it's only maybe 3 or 4. So, and then cut the leader. Here's another much thinner tree where I'm not going to really take it down that much. Just cut the competing leaders and then trim the regular leader that I want to keep. Here's another much more robust tree. Excuse me. That I think I'm going to do the same thing with. I'm going to cut it way down. Take off that whole top. And here's one that is really interesting. This guy here, because the bark is all gray versus the nice brown. And who knows? I don't know. This one here is another one that has just so many multiple leaders. Boom, 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 boom. I think I'll take it to there. And then shorten. Here's another one that is growing beautifully. That I think I'm going to go to here with this one. Once again, chopping off that old top. And in this procedure here, I'm not really looking for perfection. So if I have left a tree that maybe has 2 competing leaders and I didn't get to it, that's no biggie. Really, the best time to really do the highly detailed trimming on these guys will be next winter, when they've all gone dormant, and then you can see the branch structure, and then you can really pick and choose what you want based on that branch structure. That is just so much easier to see. So this is looking pretty good. All in here. It's looking pretty good. And is it time to move the camera? I think it is. So I'm now looking at the back, but from the other side. So you can see over here, I just did all of this. So now it's time to do this. This one here is interesting, because it's the only one that has a little bit of a weird crook. But once again, by the same token, I think I can take it down to like right here. And then let this be the new leader. Here's another, what looks like an old perimeter plant that is actually the tallest of all of them. And I think it can also have the same treatment. Take it down to about right there. Take off that whole top. But we still have this huge leader, and then chop him back. And then there's a couple other little bits of growth coming off of that guy. Here's another one. And another fairly large one here. I don't think all of these were perimeter trees, because like I said, only about 5. But I'm going to give it the same treatment. Cut to there. And then shorten what will be the new leader. Oh, here's another one with a crook. I didn't even know. And I'm just going to give him a haircut. Here's another one that has And when I'm cutting off some of this large growth, I'm not choosing the most vigorous leader. Sometimes the leader that I leave is actually smaller than the thickest, heaviest leader. And that's okay too, because I don't want things to get too thick and too heavy too soon. This tree's only a year old. Could you imagine what it will look like in 10 if I let everything thick continue and take off all the thin stuff? You really want to take off the thick stuff and leave the thin stuff. So here's a perfect example right here. Big, huge, thick leader and 3 or 4 little tiny ones. And I'm going to take off that big guy. And this is a perfect example. I really can't get to where I want on this tree. So I'm just going to cut back those other 2 leaders, even though I would really like to take that little knob off. But right now, it's just not really feasible to get to it. So that's for a future day. And just continue on. Here's another one that could very easily be shortened to there. And then cut the leader. Another one. So I'm pretty consistent with the amount that I'm taking off. And the thicker, here's another one. The thicker the trunk is, the more I'm taking off, the more distance. Some of the littler guys, I didn't take off as much. And this grove is so dense that a certain amount of competition probably means that some of the smallest, weakest trees will, the chance that they may just die it's there. There's no question about it. Here's another one that I think can come to like right there. Cut him away. And I did the overview of this guy yesterday. And I talked about how the squirrels dug. And they made a comment, yeah, how the squirrels can help you with your design. Which I just had to chuckle. In a perfect world, I'm the one that wants to make the decision. But sometimes the squirrels can do things that in hindsight you look and you say, you know, that really wasn't all that bad. And I think that's the case with the digging that they did in this grove. The empty space that they created actually has helped with the design. Because one thing I try to avoid when I'm doing a grove, am I still in the shot? I don't think I am. So maybe I should move again. So it looks like we're going to be doing 4 quadrants. So I've done the back. And so now I'm going to start on these guys in the front. Here is another perimeter tree, really heavy duty. All kind of competing leaders. And I'm going to try the best I can. And I apologize for the light. This tree is positioned that if I let the sun come up anymore, then it will be behind me. And I don't think that's a great idea either. So we're going to take him to there. Arr. Got the stump again. And then remove some of the competing leaders and then shorten the one. Here's one with just really 2 competing leaders. I'm going to take it. Now, this is a good example. This guy right here. Can I lower the camera a little bit so we can see a little better? So this guy's got the 2 leaders right here. But there's a lot of space over here. And then there's another much larger tree right here. So I would take off the larger leader and leave the thin one, but it's going to compete with the next guy. So I'm actually going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to take it like that, so that this growth on this tree actually moves out that way into that empty space. And so to that end, I'm going to try to cut it at that diagonal so that the new growth comes even more. And there's all kind of little incidental growth underneath, and I'm not really going to address any of that right now. I think that will all be part of when the tree is completely dormant. And what I'm doing now is just kind of the best case scenario, okay? If I do this, what happens here? And with a grove this dense, if you make a quote-unquote mistake on one tree, there's nobody going to see it. And of course, my philosophy on making a mistake is you can never make a mistake. You just increase the amount of time before your tree is a finished tree. So for instance, if I was just absolutely nuts out of my mind, I could take every tree down to here, just chop every single tree down to only 2 inches. It would be all bare again, and I'd have to start over. But it could be done, and they would sprout, and then you'd be starting over. It would take them much longer to get the look the way it looks right now. And here's another one that I want the new growth to be coming actually to the front. Take that guy off. And another one right here that I can cut down. So in a grove, you know, your inside trees are all like this, but then your outside trees all kind of angle away. And it doesn't mean that the trunks have to angle away. Sometimes you will see that. But like I said a few minutes ago, in nature, trees on the interior are not going to allow trees on the outside to grow into the interior because they've already got that space. And it's like, hey buddy, this is my space. Go get your own. And then we have our weak little group that the only trees that I actually root pruned was this tiny little group right here that was where the main tree is. So the squirrels dug a hole here. I dug the main tree, which was right at the perimeter. I don't know if you can see the root, but that's the root of that tree right there. And so I took these guys out of that space and put them into the hole where the squirrels had dug. So thank you, squirrels. And then I put the main tree, which at the time was the thickest one around. I think it still is, although we have some competition. So these guys are the weakest because they got their roots pruned and nobody else did. So all that energy from all the other trees where their roots did not get pruned is now coursing up through the tree. And here's another perfect example of, I want this leader to be on the outside because Mr. Main Tree isn't going to allow things to go this way. Where am I? God, I can't. Sorry. I'm so into what I'm doing, it's not even in the frame. God, it almost looks like it's fog. Okay, so can we see? God, it's still. Sorry, I really am. Okay, so here we go. This guy right here, I'm going to cut to right there. And the main tree because it was root pruned, and there were probably 10 or 12 other trees that were even taller, I'm going to let it recover more. So I'm just going to give it a tiny pinch, just a tiny pinch. And I can always cut it down. Sometimes I've seen groves where the main tree was like massive main tree and all the rest of them were just little babies all around. And I don't like that look either. I like the main tree to still appear as part of the natural grove. Okay, so now, oh, you know what I did? I lowered the camera, and that's why you can't see anything anymore. Now here we go. Now we are basically at the front again with our ilex shillings in the background. And it's just a matter of doing this section here. So I want this one here to be on the outside. This looks like another perimeter tree, so I'm going to cut it to there. So another little stub. And then trim the rest away. Then here's a much younger tree. Well, not younger, but because they all got... Well, there's basically two different planting dates. The 5 that survived the first planting, and I think it was because it was from an unhealthy tree. I took seed from 2 different trees, and one was it was just unhealthy. The seed, the cones, because actually Cypress produces a round cone. The cones were kind of dark green instead of the nice light greenish brown. Versus the other tree, the cones were just, they were much larger, and it was obvious they were just healthier. Okay. I think I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to cut. Well, you know, then again, I'm going to cut it to right there. Now I've got another dilemma here because I really want to cut this at a different angle, but the new growth is too tender to really do that. But already I'm pretty happy with the way things are coming out. See, we have 2 that are so close together. So I'm going to take, and I've got the choice of these 2 leaders right here, so I'm going to take this one off so that it doesn't compete with this one. This one, unfortunately, is coming from this side. It'd be perfect if it was coming from the other side. But there may be something to pop in the future. I think I'm going to take this guy to here. Another little knob. Here's one where it's almost perfectly symmetrical, which is pretty interesting. And this one is too. Very interesting indeed. I think this one's going to lose some of the leaders. And then chop everything else down. And we're coming down to the wire. just really got a couple more trees here. I call this one here Mr. Big. Mainly because he was a perimeter tree and he's almost as thick as the first main tree. And because it didn't get root pruned, it's a little bit more vigorous than the first main tree. So I'm going to do the same thing with him. I think I'm going to really knock him back. I'm going to take this off here and then knock him back to right there. There's still a whole bunch of competing leaders on this guy, but that's okay. We can deal with that. This is a perfect example of not cutting to where you want it, cutting below and then letting it grow. Oh no, and here's one that died, but we'll leave him because, hey, dead trees exist in nature, right? And we've just got this one more little cluster. So once again, the history of this grouping is that once I planted the seed, I did not trim them at all last year. They just grew totally unchecked, as tall as they wanted, as thick as they wanted. And then this winter I did the chop, the first chop. And I have a playlist on this tree, on this grove, the dome, that you can click on at the end of this video and you can watch the entire progression. And I must admit that they took a while to get going again. I chopped them way back and they produced a bunch of little growth like in here, this stuff. But there wasn't that much forward motion. And then just in the recent past, I would say the last 2 weeks, they've begun to really pop, as you say, as they say. Okay, another guy right there. Trim him like that. Okay. And now we can really see the hole that the squirrels dug for me. They took this whole section out. But if we look from the front, so now let's go to the front. And here is the finished product. Well, finished product today at least. And now that I'm done, I think I'm going to go get my hardboard background so we can get rid of the busyness in the back. Much better. Now we can actually see what we're looking at. So there you go. The only one that really didn't get any kind of major chop is the first main tree, only because I really want it to strengthen. You know, bonsai is a combination of horticulture and artistry. And if you don't get the horticulture right, the artistry can suffer too. So if you've got a weak tree, when I have a weak tree, I try my very best to just let it recover, even if it means letting it grow out of its form, you know, maybe delay its further development, but you've got to let weak trees recover before you try to do any kind of major work on them, or else, I know for me, I am asking for disaster. It does look kind of weird with that one main tree just pointing up. I just said how I don't like that one main tree and everybody else is subordinate to it. So what did I do today? I took a lot of multiple leaders and removed them so the tree only has 1 leader. There's still a lot of small growth down here, and that's okay. I reduced some of the trees even smaller than the original cut because they had grown so vigorously that the new growth, so let's say, I don't know if it was any of these trees, but let's say I originally cut this tree to 8 inches and then the new growth grew to 12 inches. So then I cut this tree to 7 inches, but then I have the leader here, which is back to 8 inches, but now it's got taper. And on some of them, you know, like Mr. Big here, I took him way down. And I have some weeds. This one here is actually a ficus tree, which is why I haven't pulled it yet. And I fully expect Mr. Main Tree to continue to strengthen as time goes by, and then I will probably cut him back, you know, somewhere into here and let this become the new leader, or maybe even deeper. And then eventually the whole dome will be just one continuum from smaller, taller, taller, and the main tree will not really be so visually sore thumb. So thank you so much for watching. I am really enjoying the development of this guy, and this is just a year and a quarter. The seeds were planted January 2024, and actually that was a failure. So I planted the next group probably February 2024, so only a year, and I'm just so happy with the way it's developing. So if you're happy, please hit the thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscription. I was going to say the bell, but the bell is the notification bell, right? Sorry, I've been a little sick, and the cough is a big part of it. So, thank you so much for watching. As this guy develops more and more and more, I think it's just going to be, well, for me, it's going to be a huge amount of enjoyment, and I hope you enjoy watching it develop too. And in one of the links at the end here will be the playlist for this guy where you can see the entire progression. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.